Hey everyone, welcome back. Episode 12. A lot's been happening. It's been a while, I think, since the last update. I've been going for it, to be honest, trying to get this thing finished. And I've been, I guess, neglecting the dev diary aspect of this whole thing. There's a bit of a backlog now, honestly, of stuff to talk about. But yeah, I thought it was pretty much time to start working my way through that a bit and getting some of these videos out again. I'm going to try and get through this one fairly quickly. By quickly, I don't really mean quickly. I mean quickly as in I'm not going to do retakes and stuff. I'm just going to ramble at you guys and then, upload it. Basically, now we are pretty much feature complete, which is really exciting. There's still a lot of bugs to fix and a lot of polish to add. But feature-wise, we're basically all there. Like, it's all done, almost. It's just bug fixing, it's just polish. Everything that I want it to do at this stage, unless the requirements change, is in place, which is really cool. Really exciting stuff. I think I said last time that I was going to be talking about testing this episode. I'm going to push that back a bit. Because there's more interesting things that I want to talk about first, and B, because I want to get some more actual data to discuss from people. Collect some more results, I guess, from beta testers before I actually make a whole video dedicated to just testing. I think I'll probably work a bit better. So what we're going to talk about today is the last two big features that I've built into this thing. So the first one is bonuses and environment rewards. So what do I mean by that? So in the prototype, which was my dissertation at uni, I did some testing with a couple of test subjects, and it was difficult because lockdown hit very quickly after I started testing. So I only got, I think it was 3 people to test the system, so not really a whole lot of data to really go off of. But what I did collect was this. So there was a scoring system in the prototype. It was much less involved. The game mechanics were much simpler than they are in this system that you see now. But we did have some kind of scoring to try and incentivize people to engage with the treatment. And if we look at the results for session 1, so I gave each test subject 2 sessions basically on different days. So they did 1 session, went through the entire system, got their scores, came back a couple of days later and did it again, basically. And that's kind of the idea of this whole treatment, is that you're meant to do it, you're meant to repeat the treatment and not just do it like a one-off thing. It works best if you kind of come back to it and keep on engaging with it, like over the course of a few different sessions, basically, to really cement the effect of the exposure therapy. If someone got a score of 100 on session 1, then session 2, they can't beat that high score. So it's almost like there's no real point in trying, because you can't get better than 100. So you might as well just not really try, right? And that's kind of what we found, is that, see these levels here, level 2 and level 3, level 4 and level 5 even, where the subjects have scored 100%, and then the next time they've actually done worse than that because they can't get better than 100, right? I think it's also no coincidence that these 2 levels are the longest as well, so it kind of takes the most effort, I guess, to get that kind of a high score. And because of that, they're not really engaging quite as directly with the treatment as I'd like. The only level that people seem to score higher on the second time round was a level that they didn't get a maximum score on the first time round, and I think that's pretty telling. So this is something that I wanted to address in the newer version of the system. I wanted to allow users to get a maximum score the first time round, but still have some kind of an incentive for their second and third sessions to still push them to keep getting a high score. So what I did for this was I basically said that once you get 100%, then you earn a star by that level. So I've loaded up a save game here where I have gone through the entire flow of the system 3 times and got 100% on each level 3 times. So for each of these levels here, I have 3 stars. So if we go into this bonus menu up here, then this gives us a bunch of unlocks, basically. So for each level, if you get 3 stars, then you get like a fun little kind of environmental customization unlock thing for that level. And yeah, this is kind of like a way of trying to push people to keep on getting that same high score again and again, repeatedly, basically, and not let up on the engagement with the system. So there's different categories here. You can change the kind of music that you have on. You don't have to unlock no music. That's just like a default thing that you already can choose if you want to. So there's different cursors that you can choose from. So you can go from the normal cursor to this like retro hand kind of cursor. Smiley face. You can even have a little sword type thing. I like the retro cursor. I think it just looks the best, I guess. You can have little mascots on the table that you can toggle on and off. You can have them all on at once if you want to. Just fun little cute things to kind of give you that little push to keep engaging. The big one and the coolest one, I think, is the world changes. So the normal world is this outside of the window. This kind of trees, foresty type thing. Max out level 3, you unlock night mode, so that's the same environment, but just puts it nighttime basically. The next one is beach. So this will give you like a whole kind of beach environment outside. I think these do make quite a difference as well. They kind of like change the lighting and stuff as well inside the room. Space is pretty cool. I thought that was a pretty fun one. Just stuff like that really. Just as I said, incentivize you to keep on engaging with the system after already getting a high score that one first time. The next big feature to talk about is the voiceover system. So I want to have a kind of virtual therapist almost that talks to you and guides you through the treatment of this, especially for levels 2 and 3, where it kind of asks you a bunch of spider-related questions, like some basic stuff like how many legs do spiders have, and then some more advanced stuff like how many species of spider are there, that kind of thing, just to get you kind of thinking about spiders as like a gentle way to ease into the treatment. And obviously for that, it wouldn't really be fair to expect people just to know. I'd much rather have an actual voiceover that kind of says these facts in the first place. And for every other level as well, just to kind of explain what you're meant to be doing, encouraging you to really engage with the system and stuff like that, and that kind of thing. So it's interesting how all the parts of this system, and I'll talk about this more later, the bits that have seen the most scope creep are by far the most messy, which I guess is no surprise, really. When I first went about building this whole voiceover system, I wasn't really even thinking of having subtitles. I was just thinking of having just some audio that plays over it. In systems like this that I've used before, I can think of a few examples where there'll be a voiceover, but you can't do anything until you've listened to the entire thing. And there's no way to like skip or repeat dialogue or anything, and that always kind of bugged me. So I started building this and then kind of changed the requirements of it halfway through, which means that the actual implementation is pretty messy, and I'm not super happy with it, but we'll talk about that later. It all works is the important thing. So it gives you a voiceover. There's obviously only so much space on the UI, so we're breaking it down into paragraphs basically. I will unmute this so you can actually hear what it sounds like. Guiding you through a series of exposure therapy games. Take a minute or two to look around, that kind of thing. So it's just my voice. I need to re-record it, to be honest, because you can hear my boiler clicking on and off in the background, and it's not quite like studio quality or anything. But for now, it's functional. It does the job. So you have a little progress bar that comes up and shows you like how far through that paragraph you are, basically. Switches to the next one, etc., etc. There's a bunch of buttons on the side. So there's one that turns off the audio but still keeps on playing the actual like subtitles, I guess. There's a button that lets you skip the current paragraph you're on and go to the next one. There's a button, I'm going to show it. This bottom one resets the entire voiceover back to the beginning, and then you can use that button to skip right to the end of the entire thing, basically. So, you know, if you want to, you can mute it, read through it at your own speed, and then skip when you're ready. Rewind it if you didn't catch something, which is particularly useful for the sort of comprehension spider facts levels. And yeah, just kind of like provides a bit of a virtual therapist type thing almost. There's also some settings for this that change how the autoplay works. So right now it works that the first time you go into a level, it will play the voiceover automatically. And then if you repeat that same level in the same session, it won't say everything again unless you prompt it to. So the default setting is once per session. There's a setting where you can have it on always, so every time you go into a level, it will always play the voiceover and show subtitles and that kind of thing. Or if you don't like it at all, then just never, basically. The buttons are always there, so you can always hit the repeat button and it will always start playing if you want to. But yeah, I just thought it would be good to have that a bit more customizable, I guess. So some bits of this implementation I do quite like, some bits not so much. So the way that this works is we have a new class altogether, a new component, voiceover manager. And instantly looking at this, I just don't like it, because we have all these like bilateral connections and stuff, and it's just not really clear how the flow of control works between these classes. But I've given... Yeah, this is the thing. I wanted to originally bake in all of this functionality into the level manager, right? And yeah, each level manager would have methods and functions for, yeah, playing the voiceover. Which, when I started it, seemed like a good idea, but the issue is that I want to have, if we go back to the video, so after you complete the first level, then the level's ended, and now we're showing some voiceovers about like how to use the subjective units of distress input slider here. And then at the end of the entire flow, after the last level, level ends, and it tells you some stuff about you know, coming back on different days, unlocking all the stars, stuff like that, just to kind of wrap up the experience, sort of thing. So because of the way that it's architected, the level manager for that level wouldn't be active at that time because the level has ended, basically. So what I ended up doing was separating out all the voiceover stuff into its own separate component. So each level manager has a voiceover manager, and the UI manager also has voiceover managers to play those, those specific voiceovers after certain levels have completed. Some levels, like, back to the video again, levels 2 and 3, where we're showing, say, a series of questions, then, so the questions here are, I didn't just want to have, you know, a 5-minute long voiceover and say everything and bombard the user with information and then ask questions. I wanted to split it up a little bit. So in level 2, this level here, there's a couple of paragraphs of speaking and of facts being given to you. Then it asks you some questions, and you answer those, and then it gives you some more voiceovers and some more facts, just to break it up a bit and mean that you don't have to rely quite so much on your memory, I guess. And then for level 3, there's 3 different types of spiders that you have in this box. So there's 3 different rounds, I guess, of voiceovers and questions and stuff. So for these levels, level 2 has 2 separate voiceover managers, and level 3 has 3 separate voiceover managers. So each sort of chunk, I guess, is its own instance of that class. So the way that this class actually works is that when we set it up, and I've written this, and it works, and it's done now. If I want to build on any of this more, I'm going to want to refactor it all and re-architect it all, because it's not very efficient, and it's a pain to work with. And yeah, I'll get into why. But in terms of how it works right now, when each level manager becomes active, the level starts. Then we basically tell each level manager tells its own voiceover manager. So each instance of this talks to its component, the voiceover manager, to set itself up basically, and then it will find the each button basically. So those these buttons on the side here, it references them by the name of the game object they're attached to, and then says when you click it, then call the method on this particular instance of the VO Manager class. And that, it works. It's a massive pain to work with because the way that this GameObject.find function works, it's not particularly efficient to search through every single game object in the scene to see which name matches what you've given. But it also won't return any inactive game objects. And that means that the order of execution of this whole thing gets really frustratingly important. Because if you're on a different screen, if you're on the main menu and then you click play level 1, then you need to make sure that the code that enables these game objects and that displays these buttons executes before the code that has the voiceover manager try and find them. Otherwise, it will just return null, basically. So that's a pain, and it's something that has made me kind of realize that in this architecture diagram, we're modeling how each class talks to each other class, but there's actually a lot more to it than that we're not modeling. We're not modeling which game objects each class has access to. And the thing with that is that if we take, say, main menu manager, right? So main menu manager, on this diagram, just reading what we have here, doesn't have access to level manager. But it does have a method where if you click the play button, then main menu manager references the object that level manager is attached to when it switches all the UI over. And that, because then you're activating the game object that level manager lives in, it is then triggering the start, awake, on enable functions on that level manager. So even though there's no actual relation here in this diagram, because main menu manager talks to the game object that level manager lives in, it can still trigger functionality in that class. And yeah, that's not really something that I had, I guess, thought a whole lot about when I started getting into this. It realistically might have been a good idea to try and model that, try and, I don't know, give a bit more structure to which game object each class references and talks to, because that has made things difficult to follow in a lot of ways. So I'm using this GameObject.find function as like an alternative to having public properties for these buttons on each instance of the VO manager, and then just dragging and dropping the buttons into each one. Because you don't have to have the buttons or any game object in general to be active for it to hold a reference like that. So say Spider Level 2 manager here references the 2D images that display on the laptop in Level 2. And these aren't active at the time that I've dragged and dropped them into the property field in the editor, or the inspector even. But that reference still holds anyway. It doesn't just become null, right? And that is the advantage of doing it that way. But it means that when you have loads of instances, there's over a dozen instances of VoiceOver Manager, I don't want to drag and drop manually the each button into those fields every time I change something, because that just becomes a pain to maintain. So what I should have done, because you can kind of have it both ways, is, and I only realized this after I'd built it all, basically, was to have one single aggregator script, I guess. So have a new game object with a script that has public fields for basically every game object that anything might want to reference, right? So I'd have, new game object, new script, like game object aggregator or something. Drag and drop all the buttons that I want to reference, any other game object with the spiders and stuff. And then you have one place where you're storing all of those references, and then have public getter methods in that script where, say, from VO Manager, I can just, as long as I have a reference to that aggregator script, I can then retrieve any game object that I want, basically. And it wouldn't matter if that game object isn't actually active at the time, because you've dragged and dropped it in the inspector, so the aggregator knows what it is, and then it can pass that reference along to, like, Voiceover Manager, for example. And then you wouldn't have to worry about all this finicky order of execution stuff. Which, would have been much easier. I really do want to re-architect this all and refactor it so it just makes some bloody sense. But the thing is, it's done now, and it's basically feature complete, and there are some bugs here and there, but there's nothing like massive now anymore. It's just polished, and all the bugs that are there are pretty easily fixable. So at this stage, there's not really a whole lot of benefit in investing all this dev time to re-architect everything, when there's not really a whole lot more work to actually be done on it. If the requirements do change, and I decide that I do want to start adding on more bits to this system, then that will probably be a different discussion, I guess. But yeah, it's an interesting one, because the UI of this whole system is definitely the weakest part architecture-wise, and it's the part that I gave the least thought to going in. All that I was really thinking about when I made a start was that we just have, a main menu button, a reset button, a skip level button, some text to show the score and high score and stuff. I wasn't really thinking about how, the main menu would work. I knew there'd be one, but I was kind of glossing over it, if I'm honest, at the time, which was a mistake. I knew that I wanted some graph, but again, I was not really thinking about it a whole lot. The main menu and the graph and the settings menus and stuff are all kind of simple because they haven't got to share the same space on the UI. It gets really difficult when, especially here, when we have, the voiceover ends and then the buttons appear and stuff. And we're having to, alternate between different UI elements, basically. Where it just gets confusing and a pain. So, I didn't really expect to have all of these. Especially with these buttons on the side. Was a kind of thought that occurred to me when I was half done building it all, and then decided that I really wanted them. But because I hadn't defined that going in, it was much more difficult to build it around the existing stuff than it would have been had I just, planned for it to begin with. So the UI stuff is a mess, but it all works now, and unless things change, then it's probably going to stay that way, I think. So since we're talking about execution order, I thought that I would just, share a little something I learned that, suddenly made a lot of the issues that I was struggling with make a whole lot of sense, and this is not something that I knew. I was misunderstanding things a little bit before, so I thought, maybe some of the people out there would benefit from this as well. So I knew that in terms of monobehavior execution order, we go awake, on enable, and then start. So we call the awake function before we call the on enable function, and on enable to call start. So you can kind of use those functions to set things up for the next function, right? Stuff like initializing scripts or instantiating game objects in awake and then on enable, and then doing things with them in start. So, for example, if we try and do gameObject.find, and then find our spider, and then call some function on it, or I guess find the actual component of the script on the spider first, and then call that function anyway. So if we do that in start, then we need to make sure that that game object, is actually active before we get to the start function. And a lot of the time, a different script might be the thing responsible for actually activating that game object in the first place. So what I thought I could do was just say, let's say we have a different script that is activating this spider. As long as we say that that script does the spider activating in its, awake or on enable functions, because they're executed before start is, that means that they'll execute first, and then start will execute, and by the time the start executes, that spider is active to be found, and we wouldn't get any null reference exceptions. That's not really how it works. So what I thought originally was that Unity monobehavior, I guess, would loop through every script, call awake on every script, loop through every script again, call on enable every script again, and then call start. When in actuality, and I think it does this based off the order that you arrange everything in your hierarchy, so it will actually go call, loop through the methods loop through all these objects, basically, starting with the higher ones, I think. So look at spider level 1, call, awake, on enable, start on level 1. Then go to level 2, call, awake, on enable, start, and then do it that way. So just because you have some code in the on enable function in one game object, that doesn't necessarily mean that that code will get called before the start function on another game object, if that makes sense. It will depend on how you arrange it in this hierarchy. So that is something that definitely tripped me up a lot. I hope that makes any kind of semblance of sense. These dev diaries are tricky because there's no one around to confirm that you're not just speaking gibberish. You just have to, trust that what you're saying makes any semblance of sense. But yeah, I thought I'd just pass that along because I found that little revelation to be pretty helpful, I guess, and started making things, a lot less confusing, I guess. It's not a global cycle of call all the on enables, all the awakes, or all the awakes, and then all the on enables, and then all the starts. It's on a per script basis, basically. Okay, I think that's probably already about half an hour of me rambling. So I'll leave it there. I still have more to talk about, but we will, leave that for the next video, I think. Next time we'll be talking about getting the data logging working. So whenever someone uses the system and submits a anxiety rating after the end of each level, I want that to be anonymously logged so that I can see the big aggregation of data. And then show you guys that hopefully VR exposure therapy actually works. With data to prove it. So pretty exciting stuff. And that's all for this time. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.